Good morning and welcome to today's session, How to Prevent the Top SAP Security Challenges. My name's Emma, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm on the marketing team here at SafePass, and I'm delighted to be joined by Nalini Kumar, founder of Incresol, and Navinder Kaplish, Client Services Director here at SafePass. So just a few housekeeping items before we jump into the session. The session is being recorded for on-demand viewing, and we would love your participation in the session. So feel free to pop any questions you have in the control panel, and our speakers will get to those at the end of the session. So this is the agenda we're going to be following today, talking about SAP Security Risks, followed by challenges, best practices, architecture, solutions, and a roadmap that you can follow. So let's dive into the session, which is why you're all here today. So Navinder, why are we here today?
Hello everyone, Navinder Kaplish, Client Services, the Managing Director at SafePass. And this is to lay out the big picture. Why are we doing this session? So from a perspective of security risk, there's been a significant increase in data breaches for the last few years. And of course, these numbers are from various studies carried out, but the numbers are going up, not down. Data breaches are actually costing more as the value of individual and personal data becomes more important. And as we know, SAP, as other ERP systems, so a lot of personal data. And I mean, if you're a client and you have SAP and somebody hacks in, they can basically start weaponizing those critical vulnerabilities that you might have. So SAP implementations are complex. The environment might have some weaknesses which you're not even aware of, and experts basically who know this topic and they hack you, they can really get in and hurt you. So basically, you need to think about this from the start. And insider threat is also a big challenge. So insider threat basically is when you've got somebody, an employee on the inside, intentionally or unintentionally leak security related information. So we've got various types of risks around that. Somebody can make a fake phone call or clicks on a link which they're not supposed to click, and they might be the administrator for your SAP system. So insider threat is actually quite significant, whether it's intentional or not. I mean, yeah, so the percentage of cyber attacks on SAP systems, like other ERP systems, are quite significant. I mean, there's some statistics showing up to 20% of all such attacks are successful. So there's a study that they did where they looked at about 1,500 cyber attacks on SAP in the period of 12 months, and about 300 were successful, which is 20%. So there are so many avenues to improve from a security and controls perspective. And in this webinar with Nalini, who's a specialist in SAP security and controls, we hope to cover some of those, and hopefully you'll walk away with more information on how you can protect your system. From a SafePass perspective, we are a governance, risk, and compliance tool. We focus on enterprise level access governance, so not just SAP, but beyond SAP as well. And we can help meet some of these requirements as well. So that's what we'll talk about today.
Great insight there, Navinder. Okay, so what are some of the security challenges, Nalini, that SAP customers face?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's like as Navinder said, nowadays there are a lot of security risks are getting increased on SAP systems. It's like earlier, most of the systems are supposed to be closed-bound systems, or well controlled within the specific data center or premise or internet control systems. But now the SAP system is no more like that. After the web interface or the different cloud solutions from SAP are available in the market. So many customers are leveraging their SAP systems to integrate and utilize along with the cloud-based solutions or the legacy applications. So considering that, the risks are keep on getting increased day by day. So as part of that, just coming to the control management, okay, there are various challenges that are coming to the SAP customers. One, that is the complexity, because SAP is a huge system. There are various modules, various functionalities, a lot of things to be considered. So it's a big challenge to design a proper controlling system, and with respect to the size of the functionalities or the various roles that users are going to play or the act in the system. Yeah, Emma, please move on. Another typical complexity or a challenge in terms of controlling maintaining the well control of the system is like customizations. Okay, because I can say that no SAP system is used as is. Okay, so at least there is a huge customizations that we make in SAP systems based on the typical business requirements. Okay, so as part of that, so there is a big chance that new risks or challenges may arise from the customization that we are making or developing new modules or the new enhancements or new changes that we are making to the system or introducing into the standard SAP system. So there it's very much required to put a proper process to control these customizations through a stringent process to validate and set the proper controls on top of the customizations as well. And typically, it's the user access management is another big challenge because SAP systems are going to be accessed by the huge volume of users. Okay, because the most of the SAP using companies are operating from multiple countries and multiple geographic locations. Okay, so the users are spread across different regions and they play different business roles, and sometimes they play the multiple roles and multiple functionalities. Okay, so it's very much essential to draw the proper boundaries in terms of their access, what they are entitled to access and what they can see, what they can update or create. So that's very much required to make sure that the system and the systems are accessed by the right users up to the right extent only. So for that, you need to define a proper segregation of duties and design the role system properly and evaluate time to time. So it's a complex process. It's a big challenge again. Whenever a role changes, we need to evaluate whether the user is getting any additional permissions which are not supposed to be, or if they are getting less, that's okay. But if they are getting more, which is not observed, that may create some challenges or some issues. This point, integration with other systems, that's the most important thing, because now the earlier ERP used to be it's like more isolated system, but no more. ERP, all SAP ERPs are well connected with the various applications, as I said earlier. It's like you might be using some cloud-based solutions or third-party solutions, and there's a lot of integrations are going on with SAP systems. So it's one big challenge is like the uniformity of the control framework may not be same between SAP and other applications. So in that case, what we need to do is it's a big challenge to bring a uniform control framework across the different systems in the landscape. So there you need to have a proper tools to manage it in a better way. Change management, it's a continuous process. Any business, it's like day to day, there will be a business process refinements, or the process will evolve periodic time to time, right? So we need to add some changes to the system, and that will definitely introduce some new risks and challenges as well. So every change that we are making in the system, that should have a stringent process or a proper process to be adopted. So to make sure that those changes don't carry any new risks or unaddressed or unidentified risks. So that's another big challenge in SAP, because there will be various changes, country-specific changes or a particular process-specific changes. It's a continuous process. We can see that almost weekly, a few TRs, your transport requests, you might be moving to the production. So there should be a proper scrutinization process with respect to the control framework to be evaluated when with respect to the change management. Reporting and monitoring is another big challenge, because considering the vastness of the application and the volume of the users and the functionalities, it's a challenging task in SAP to keep monitor the access controls, as well as the any control violations are happening or not, or the compliance wise the system is up to the mark or not. So all these activities, it requires some good tool to have a proper reporting, and also give us some alerts, time to time alerts, to make sure that we react as quick as possible when something is going wrong. So reporting monitoring is challenging, but with the right tools, you can simplify that.
Thanks, Nalini. Do you want to add anything?
I thought I'll just add. Thank you very much for that. That was really good. I was just going to say that from a user access management perspective, specifically, this is one of the critical controls that auditors normally look for: periodic user access recertification. And nowadays, enterprise-wide clients just have one ERP system. they might have SAP, then they might have a link into Day, they might have Coupa, and going beyond that as well, you have your IBM solutions like SailPoint, you have IGA solutions, you have ticketing solutions like ServiceNow. So this whole landscape of applications, most of which do come on SOX purview, makes the user access management challenging. And this is where SafePass actually we have is enterprise-wide. So it's not just SAP. So it doesn't compare to SAP GRC directly, because SAP GRC is only on SAP, but we're looking at an enterprise-wide solution whereby if you have user access management, SAP linked into Coupa, for example, validate access recertification. You can do that together in one single common platform. And integration with other systems is quite critical, which is a factor these days for any ERP system. So controls across applications, and especially applications that are relevant, are a critical challenge, and we can help with that. So I'll add in just a suggestion around how we can help the perspective.
And what about the SAP Security Architecture, Nalini?
Yeah, because this is one important thing, because many companies, it's like many companies having different strategies to manage the security architecture of SAP. Okay, but I would like to get into the almost all the layers of security that is required to be considered or taken care while working with the SAP systems or while maintaining the SAP systems. One of the topmost layer is the infrastructure security. It's more like your data center. It may be on-premise or a cloud, or it's like any other hybrid approach you are following. So that should be well protected first. Okay, so that's the first gate I can say to enable the intrusions. So it's strongly recommendable to follow the zero trust security architecture. That means don't trust anything. Okay, don't assume or don't consider anything is okay. And also in case of on-prem or the specific your control data centers, video surveillance and the video alerts mechanism, something should be enabled, and restricted accesses to be planned, because not everyone can get into the data centers, right? So that should have some proper mechanism to be implemented to allow the right people to get into the data centers. And firmware upgrades, this is a highly neglected item. Okay, most of the times what we'll do is because considering the SAP servers has a lot of business criticality, we cannot take much downtime, so there will be a risk involved with the firmware upgrade. So most of the companies, or some companies, feel that let's do the firmware upgrade just like once in a while, not on a periodic basis. But it's not advisable. So in the current security threats, if you look at it, the firmware upgrades, missing firmware upgrades also causing a lot of issues. So it's strongly recommendable to plan the firmware upgrades periodically so that you can protect your physical infrastructure properly. And disk level encryptions, okay, this is also important area where if something goes wrong with the disk or that theft happened, then at least these encryptions are going to safeguard your information if at all the disks are going out. Or you might be having some backup devices, or you might be following 3-to-1 backup strategies like that. One will be in the data center, one might be at the another offsite, one might be at the cloud or something like that. In those cases, there may be a chance that misplacement or the missing infrastructure of the disk possible. So these encryptions are going to protect your data even something goes wrong. And anti-malware solution, that's the most important thing. All servers to be protected with respect to the anti-malware solutions to be set up well. And intrusion detection systems also to be it's like planned in place, so that any suspicious activities happening, immediately some alerts or the alarming notifications are going to be raised from the infrastructure. So next layer of security is the network. So most of the attacks happens from here, mostly cyber security related, or specifically to the that can spread through the networking layer. Okay, so the first item here is like a firewall. So you should have a proper firewall mechanism to be enabled, okay, so that it can protect you from the proper policies, security policies, and all the required configuration setup to be enabled in the firewall. And also your firewall firmwares or firewall patches to be updated time to time, because any new vulnerabilities are identified or new virus detections are there in the security vulnerabilities are identified. Those they keep release the patches, so we need to be updated our firewalls time to time, or as and when requires. Another thing is the DMZ zone. That's the first zone which will be opened up for the internet, okay, internet-based accesses. So that should have a proper protection mechanisms to be in place. Okay, so DMZ zone, just keeping some applications DMZ zone, that doesn't mean that you are protecting those applications or protecting the applications down the line systems or behind the DMZ zone. Okay, we need to have a mechanism like the access restrictions in terms of the rate limits. You need to have, suppose some attacks are happening like DDoS or DOS attacks, that should be well configured at the firewall level, and some applications also having their own protection mechanism against these DDoS attacks. So whenever you are exposing some application through DMZ, that should be considered for DDoS attacks. Okay, and most of the firewalls are well equipped with these inbuilt capabilities, and there are some dedicated tools. It's strongly recommendable to enable those, because in the current world, this the highest attacks are happening, cyber attacks are happening with respect to DOS or DDoS. And the tricky part is the DDoS. Okay, we can't identify whether it's a really good request or a bad request from the user. Another typical important thing is the network segmentation. Okay, so this is a bit neglected area in most of the data center designs, which I came across. Okay, it's like we used to keep all servers and all devices in the same network, okay, or the same network segment, okay, which is not advisable considering the ransomware, all these type of attacks that are happening nowadays. Better to keep your servers in one network segment and the administrators in a separate segment, and also your better to plan your backup devices in a different network segment with a proper permissible port openings or the bridging between these network segments. So that segmentation at least will protect. If some intrusion happen at one segment level, at least others will be protected or will be helpful to us. Okay. Another thing is like a DNS proxies or the NATing. So most of the firewalls, it's like whenever you want to expose some application, we rely on the NATing. So you should have a proper policies to be enabled at the NATing level at the firewall. It's like sometimes what we'll do for testing purpose, or maybe due to difficulties in the troubleshooting, or some time limitations or the knowledge gaps. So in those cases, we allow all. Maybe we allow in the NATing, we allow all the ports probably, or we forward the it's like traffic from all the IPs from the internet or all zones from the internet probably. So that's not advisable. So you need to create a proper fencing whenever you're doing the NATing, so that you need to restrict the request originating points. For example, your application is something in the cloud, so there will be some IP ranges from which the request may originate. Okay, so in those cases, you should put a proper boundary in terms of IP whitelisting or the IP boundaries, or any other possible options are available. Also, there may be a chance of that you can also restrict the incoming requests geographically as well. Suppose you're not operating from specific countries or the all over the globe, you are specific to US only, or you are specific to specific country like UK, India, something like that. In that cases, you can restrict the dry boundary in terms of which all the geographic region based IP requests or other requests originations can be allowed. Okay, and another important thing is like deny all open required. This is a important protocol that should be followed when it comes to the security. Okay, so for testing purpose, we'll open up everything and then we'll try to close one by one. But ideally, you should close all and then open up whatever is really required. Okay, that's that approach. Even though it's a bit time taking, but we need to troubleshoot and open only the required stuff. And WAF and UTM, they are going to play a crucial role, because they play a critical role in terms of DDoS attacks, or some sort of whitelisting, or some sort of identifying some abnormal traffic coming. Okay. Another thing is like a VPN security. When the users are working from remote locations, or post-COVID, this became a biggest topic, VPN security, because most of the team working from home or remote locations are different areas. So we need to consider VPN security also one of the topmost item, because if the VPN security has some gaps, then there is a good chance that something can originate from that side as well, in terms of viruses or in terms of data breach aspects as well. So MFA, so that's the most important thing. Wherever it's like whatever the type of authentication or the access mechanisms we are enabling, so better to go with the MFA in all the places, so that will at least ensure that the right person only accessing the system. At least that will give us a maximum possible safeguard. And network behavior and anomaly detection, these type of alerts, most of these firewalls or the WAF or the UTM tools are having a good anomaly detection mechanisms. The only thing is you need to configure them well, and you need to have a monitoring, and also there is a lot of artificial intelligence tools also evolved nowadays, which can easily detect any abnormal traffics or abnormal activities are happening with respect to your servers immediately. That can give you some light, or give you some notifications or alerts. And coming to the next layer is the OS. Once the network, then the operating system layer is the important thing. Okay, so we can see a lot of patches are getting released from all the operating system providers, including Microsoft or the SUSE or Red Hat or all these predominant operating systems, HP or the IBM AX. Okay, so that's important thing is like the patching we need to make it as a practice in the organization. Like the patching should happen periodically, or based on the sensitivity, we may need to do the patching on immediate basis as well, based on the applicability or the impact on our organization. And job processings, whatever the job schedules are happening, that should be run in a secured manner. It should not have the all-in-all access, or that should not create some chaos on the system. And file permissions, this is a highly neglected area in most of the operating systems, mainly in SAP environments. Okay, because your partner, support partner, or your administrators, sometimes what they will do, if something is not working, they put 777 permission or read, write, execute whole permissions they will give. So, but later, not sure if they exactly reverted it back, or there's no guarantee that it's maintained. So better to have a key. It's like keep an eye on the file permissions that we are keep on amending in the operating system level, because that's also going to create a big problem. And the NFS is like network file systems. There's another big originating point for any type of viruses spread from the user laptops or from different sources. Okay, if the network is bypassed, even NFS is going to be another thing. So we strongly recommend that don't go for the all-in-all access to the NFS, like star permissions, don't give it there. Okay, restrict from a specific IP to IP, folder level restrictions, and don't give as anonymous users, give it as a specific user-based binding only from the NFS server to the servers in which we are mounting those file systems, so that we can control a lot of virus intrusions. And access control, because the server should not be accessed by everyone. So the most important thing, okay, it's like we used to have a bad practice, like all servers used to have a common password. Okay, so at least I observed a lot in many companies. Okay, so that's not appropriate, and we need to have a proper strong password mechanism. Or sometimes it used to be like @123 with the company key indicator, or the some small abbreviation of the company, or some sort of a practice. Okay, so our #123 or something like that, which are going to be easily predictable passwords. So if any network breach happens, immediately the next step is going to be operating systems. So that is going to create a big problem. So it is strongly recommendable to keep a strong password mechanism. Okay, along with that, access control also, who is going to access what. And it's like there should be a proper whitelisting of IPs. So suppose these particular IPs only can log into the operating system, might be your admin PC's IP addresses, or your support partner specific IP addresses, or probably some mechanism, or you can bring in some gem server, from that only you can log into these servers. Okay, something like that. So proper access control is very much required to protect your servers, operating system level. And logging, okay, so sometimes it is observed that logging is disabled in some servers, maybe due to disk issues or the log rotation issues, or maybe different reasons. But it's highly advisable to make sure that your logging is enabled throughout. Okay, because any post-mortem analysis is required. Logging is the first thing we are going to review, from where we can understand what went wrong, or what exactly the activity happened in terms of access or activity, or the executions happened, script executions, anything happened. And config control, that's another important thing. It's like it should go through, any config changes should go through a thorough review process. Okay, there's a possibility that knowingly or unknowingly, sometimes we use it to miss the security aspects when we are doing some config changes. So it's highly advisable to have a thorough config control mechanism, or a procedure, standard operating procedures, if you are making any config changes to be enabled. And firewall and IP tables, this is another area, as per my experience, okay, in many SAP servers. Okay, I might saw around 100+ SAP servers so far, okay, in different companies. So there I saw that they feel that the network firewall is anyhow there. So what is the need of operating system level firewall? Okay, they used to disable the firewall, or they used to keep all-in-all access, okay, star level access they used to provide. Similarly, they used to disable or don't maintain anything in IP tables. Okay, but which is not a good practice. Okay, so if any intrusion happens, if you want to protect a specific application or a server, then IP tables or firewall are going to help us. At least we can protect, even the intrusion happens at the network layer, but these firewalls are going to protect to get into the operating system or application level. So only allow whatever the communications required, use through these firewalls, OS level firewalls. And the next item is the application security. It's more like your SAP applications like SAP NetWeaver or SAP CRM, any application that you are using to say. Okay, so SAP is keep on releasing security notes almost weekly. You might be seeing at least one security note coming in in particular to specific applications. It can be S4HANA, it can be ECC, or it can be related to NetWeaver, or it can be related to database or something like that. So it is strongly recommendable evaluate the impact of that security node and plan the implementation of the security nodes time to time or on immediate basis based on the applicability and sensitivity. And secure code, that's another most important thing. Most of the times, different partners might be writing the code or developing the code. You should have a proper mechanism in place, because whatever the custom code we are developing, that can create a lot of gaps in terms of the control or the risk. Okay, they might not be putting proper authorization checks, or they might not be handling proper security mechanism. They might be opening up everything, or there is no proper restrictions in that code. So that should be evaluated well. And SAP also came up with a lot of security analysis tools for the code. So better to make it as a practice to use those tools through ATC only. ATC, above test cockpit, hope most of you are aware who are from the SAP background. So that has a vulnerability test tools available in that. Okay, one of the variant. So try to use that to analyze your ABAP code or any code that you are developing specific to SAP. And configuration of a server, that's another important thing, because sometimes we open the client, we forgot to close it. So if you open the client, so anyone can make the changes, or there can be a possibility of impact on the stability of the servers, right? Or sometimes we do some profile parameter changes, instance profile or the default profile parameters. So there should be a proper invigilation mechanism whenever something related to the configuration of a server is changing. That should go through the thorough review process and the approvals process, so that we can ensure the server stability. And security logging, that's another thing. SAP has given a lot of security logging features. Those should be activated as a best practice. And communications like application servers or these servers, whatever the communication is happening, so better to disable the non-secure communications, enable only the secure communications. That's like HTTPS based communications or SSL based communications only. In case of FTP, we try to go for the SFTP based communications if it is an integrations. Okay, authorization checks, a lot of authorization objects pre-delivered by SAP, and we can create G objects or the custom objects as well based on the requirement. And whenever we are writing code or anything, guide your or train your developers or the partners, set a guidelines to your partner developers to make sure that they do have an authorization check in every program that they are developing. Okay, that's a one common mistake I came across with many partners that they are developing a code. And change control, that's the most important thing. Which change should go to production, and is it evaluated in terms of risk or not? That mechanism to be enabled. Privileged users, that is nothing but super users basically. Sometimes some emergency in production, so what we'll do, we'll enable the super user, or we can give the SAP all authorization. That is nothing but that user can do anything in the system, that can see anything in the system. So that should have a proper logging mechanism, and also proper it's like there should be a proper invigilation on top of it. Okay, so that generally we call them as a firefighter IDs or the SAP or authorized or super user IDs. So that should be a time bound and should be properly logged and go through a proper scrutinization whenever enabling those users. Password policies, that's another important thing, because we need to keep set the proper password policies time to time. Okay, and also we observed that SAP also has the possibilities to go with the MFA based options. So if possible, go with the MFA enabled along with the strong password policies. That would help to protect. And another thing is API security, because nowadays SAP is getting integrated with many other systems, okay, like cloud-based or any other systems through API communications, REST or the SOAP-based communications. So whatever the APIs we are exposing, that should be properly scrutinized in terms of the security aspects. And also most of the places I observed personally, like there is no rate limit at all. Okay, if some endpoint is a weak endpoint is exposed outside and it is getting called or exploited by the by some sort of a hacker or a or a cyber attack, in that case your server resources will be locked up. Okay, if there is no rate limit. So it's always better to enable the rate limits whenever you are exposing some sort of APIs outside. And also you need to whitelist. Okay, suppose in case of gateway, there is a whitelisting concept is there. Who can reach or who can call these APIs? IP-based whitelisting you can give. Those type of securities are always advisable to enable. And the web dispatcher, that is nothing but your DMZ zone system, where it's nothing but a reverse proxy. And there are a lot of security features available in web dispatcher, but it is observed that the default is getting enabled, but not all the best practices are getting implemented there. So it is strongly recommendable to evaluate each and every aspect of security aspects of web dispatcher. There are good guides by SAP, or there are decent SAP notes are there in terms of security related to web dispatcher, because any intrusion happens through web dispatcher, so we need to protect that well. Yeah, please move on, Emma. The next one is the data security. Okay, so it's this is the main important thing, because we need to protect our data. There are different levels of breach happens here. It can be an internal breach, it can be a threat, or some intrusion based breach also happens. Okay, so or can be something like bypassing application layer, some intrusion into your database directly. That also may cause data breaches. Okay, data security concerns. So considering HANA DB or any other Sybase or Oracle or any databases, if you look at it, they keep on releasing their security patches, whatever the vulnerabilities they are coming across are identified. So it is strongly recommendable to go with the DB patching, okay, as and when required, or as and when the OEM releases their security patches. And also the DB secure communication, all the communications through secure communication channel only. In most of the companies, I observed that it's a non-secure communication between application and the DB. Even though these two are your systems only, between maybe in the same data center, but it's advisable to enable, by default, enable the secure communication between these two systems. And data at rest encryption, that is nothing but your backups or the data that is getting persisted on your disk, that should be encrypted, so that even though some infra loss or some theft happens, you will be safe. Okay, data in transit encryption, that is for the network as like communication layer security. And logging, every database or every application has a security logging mechanisms, and also you need to enable the NF authorizations and role-based accesses at the data layer as well as application layer. And the most important thing here, the another thing is non-production system data protection. Okay, this particular topic is a bit neglected. Okay, in some customers I came across. It's like more as a general practice, quarterly once or half yearly once, we used to refresh quality system from the production for the better testing and the observations or the user acceptance point of view. So that means the business data that is residing in your quality servers or in the development test clients, they are as good as like your production data. There is no masking, because SAP don't have any ready-made tool to do the mask the data. It's a bit expensive to do that job. So your developers or your testers, whoever are doing their job, maybe some business side or the IT side, so they have access to the whole information in these systems, because they are not highly monitored, and there is a possibility that your data breach can happen from this layer, as well as like a production equivalent data. So those systems should not be neglected. There also you need to put a proper security or the authorization mechanisms to protect the data breach from these systems. And another important thing is like classification of your information. So it's strongly recommendable to classify your information, like which is sensitive, which is non-sensitive, it's like you can divide into the 3 zones or 4 zones. Like, okay, based on that, you can cross-verify your control mechanisms or the audit mechanisms to ensure that the sensitive data is always highly protected. And the last one is operational security. It's more like it's like once you have taken care of all the other layers of security, the next thing is operations to be protected. That means business should be business continuity should be assured from the IT side. So for that, there are various options available. Like we have high availability mechanisms in SAP or disaster recovery based on our RTO, RPO policies. So they should be in place. And regular security assessments, that's another important thing. Security is not a one-time job. We need to remember that. It should be a periodic assessments, maybe quarterly, half yearly, whatever the guidelines or the policies you define. Based on that, you should have periodic assessments and prevent any preventive measures to be implemented time to time. We need to implement, and any reactive things or any suspicious things happen immediately, that should be analyzed and fix it. And you need to have a proper segregation of duties should be in place to ensure operational security and data security. And also in terms of backups, sometimes even though we have HA and DR, sometimes we may be in a situation like we need to depend on our backups. Okay, it may be your DB backups or the log backups that you are taking from the with respect to the database. So periodically make it as a practice to have your restoration tests. The backup is really working or not, it has some gaps in it or what, with respect to that. And regular patching is very much required. That's what we already discussed in all the layers. And DR drills, that's another important thing. You need to periodically have the DR drills. Okay, these are all at the different layers that you can think about in terms of evaluating your security aspects. What are there, what are not there. Based on that, you can plan your revision to the security architecture. And Navinder, you can add more if you have something here.
Thank you, Nalini. I think you've covered everything really well. Nothing else.
Okay, great. Yeah, Emma, please move on to the next slide. Okay. So the governance solution, it's like the first and foremost thing is like we need to have a proper check in terms of data security. The most important thing is the roles, authorizations, and access control. So the SAP has a lot of authorization objects pre-delivered, and we'll create our own new authorization objects by combining few of the standard authorization objects. And the most important thing is we need to have a proper SOD in place. Okay, because you need to have proper definition of your job functions and roles, who is going to do what, and what are the functions to be enabled for them. Based on that, your authorization framework to be sliced accordingly, and roles to be created in the system. And also, even though we have a strong authorization management system, sometimes exceptions are inevitable. We need to give some exceptions sometimes, but we need to have a keep track of those exceptions, and also the time bound exceptions we need to have it. And another important thing is firefighters. We already discussed. It's like SAP all. That's nothing but the most dangerous authorization we give to anyone. So mainly from your support vendors or the in-house IT, sometimes they used to get these SAP all or maybe SAP support. Okay, so that firefighter IDs management is very much important. Okay, in any case, if something goes wrong, you need to have a root cause analysis, and for that you need to have a proper history and on what basis and what purpose these particular permissions are enabled. So you need to have a proper mechanism for this firefighter ID management. And another thing is like table level data access. That's like, even though I don't have authorization to a particular transaction code or a particular menu in SAP, but if I have access to a table, a smart guy can extract the whole data out. Like your SE16 or SE11 or SE16N, there are various key codes from which you can see it. Or there is like in HANA database, there is a direct access. Like HANA Studio also has a direct SQL queries. You can write and read the data. So ideally, it is advisable to keep an eye on these table level accesses and who are having the permissions in the production or in the quality systems where you have a sensitive data copied from the production. The next area is a transaction monitoring. Okay, it's more like in some cases I observed that the fraud or the breach was identified almost a year later, or sometimes after 2-3 years later also, or sometimes it may be 3-4 months later. So, but we need to have proper strong invigilating mechanism on the transaction monitoring. Who is doing what, and are they properly accessing the system in their control or in their particular respect to their job roles or not? Okay. So with respect to that, you need to have proper tools in place to have keep an eye on your transaction monitoring. Okay. Sometimes what will happen, SAP also has some lot of BAPI or the APIs exposed. So if there is any, it's like unwanted user management APIs are exposed outside without knowingly or unknowingly. In that case, there is a possibility that the intrusions can happen from those APIs, and some new user might be created in the system. That user might be used to exploit the system or take out the data. So for that purpose, you need to keep an eye on the complete activity monitoring in terms of abnormal activity monitoring to be enabled on the system using a right tool. Okay, something like SafePass. Yeah, Navinder, you want to speak something or add something to here?
No, I think it's covered really well. Just a quick comment that segregation of duties is the most well-established, well-known general control. Most companies struggle with it, even after having and from an SOD perspective, of course, SafePass perspective, we have a product that's an SAP SOD, but also cross-application SOD, which is a challenge that we see more and more that companies want to solve. And from a transaction monitoring perspective, we can help with various types of analytics, duplicate invoices, etc. So yeah, we have tools that can help with, and that's it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think I'm just going to talk about some of the use cases from an IT general controls perspective, and this is what SafePass does. So, like I mentioned earlier, we're an enterprise-wide governance platform, which means that we cater to various ERP systems, various applications. And these are the areas we work in. I've already mentioned the first box you see on the left there, which is the segregation of duties related control. So of course you can have detective, SOD, periodic reviews, and we have really nice dashboards that management can use and can use. Other than that, we also cover the use case, which is around changes to role, because when you modify a role, it's difficult to know sometimes what the impact of that change will be from a segregated duties perspective. So we have a product that focuses on simulating changes in the SafePass application before you implement it in SAP or ERP systems. And that is quite important because that basically helps even analyze the ERP environment. So that certainly helps. Other than that, self-service fine-grained user access request management. I mean, this is basically when you request access, it's a preventative segregation of duties control, whereby we can enable that you check for segregation of duties violations before the access gets assigned, which is really very helpful to keep your SOD violations low. Then one of the largest use cases, I say largest because you've seen a lot of demand for this with very large global clients, the enterprise-wide granular access recertification, and basically also called as a user access review. So we basically have that can go across applications, even across IDM solutions, in pull in from SailPoint, for example, ensure that the access between the access assigned in SailPoint is actually what provisioned in the source ERP system. We also have integration with SailPoint type application. Sorry, with ServiceNow applications, where once the access certification is completed, we can send data directly to ServiceNow, and tickets are automatically created and assigned to the teams working on it. So we're automating the entire process using our platform from an access certification perspective, which has been quite quite popular. So that's one of the use cases we see a lot of demand for this. Other than that, we also focus on privileged access management. I think Nalini mentioned firefighter. SAP has a very unique capability around firefighter, of course. We also that area, and continuous transaction and configuration and master data monitoring is where we look at changes to critical configuration items. And you can take an object and we can track against it, whereby any changes made to that object should have evidence behind it, whereby the change control board has approved it or not, and we can have that automated in an process in the SafePass application. So when an enterprise client buys SafePass, they're really looking at buying a solution can take care of IT general controls, ITGC issues across the enterprise, and these are the use cases primarily in the access management space, primarily in the change management space, all the configuration monitoring and the master data monitoring, and that's how we cover that. I don't know if there's anything else, Nalini or Emma, you want to add. I think that's the case that I'll talk about.
You almost covered up all the pointers. Okay, even we are running out of time. It seems we have a few more minutes to get into the Q&A session. It seems. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like for any SAP customer, if they want to evaluate their governance aspects, or if they want to set up the governance process properly. So there are 4 phases we can divide them. It's like first thing is align your settings. It's more like you need to define what all to be covered in your security aspects. Like you need to configure something in SAP, configure few things at different layers. Okay, so all those security aspects to be implemented. Apply your settings is nothing but implement all the security required aspects, and also design proper segregation of duties and map the roles against that, and map the map to a specific organization, because most of the SAP systems are multi-organization systems, okay, or multi-company systems within the same SAP. So each organization-wise, you need to evaluate the segregation of duties and implement the proper role mechanism, and also the SAP application level or the SAP system level security parameters to be well tuned. And once they are done, the next step is like emergency procedures. When the emergency or some situation arises, so that should not create a panic. So if we define proper strategy or the emergency handling procedures, if we document it, then if such situation arises, it would be easy for the teams to follow that protocol or follow that procedure. So they can simply implement it. And we need to train our teams with respect to all these emergency procedures. Either it can be a cyber attack, can be a data breach, can be anything. Okay. So proper for all foreseeable emergencies can be documented and trained to the team. Okay, to act properly when the situation arises. And the third thing is like we need to have, as I said, security is not a one-time job. So we need to keep having the housekeeping and review activities like periodic assessments, or any change happens. At that time, you need to evaluate any impact because of that change, or any instability possibilities, or any new risk possibilities because of the change that we are doing in the system. Maybe with respect to the role management, or maybe with respect to some new role assigned to some new users, or some new process implemented, and you are adding some more roles because of that new process to the existing users. So name anything. So we need to keep review our security aspects time to time and assess them, and do the needful like preventive measures in the system. And fourth one is like considering the systems like SAP. SAP is not a one system. It's like even within SAP itself, it's a huge, and also it involves a lot of other applications depending on SAP, like your legacy systems or any other web applications or the cloud solutions. So it's like monitoring all together is not an easy task. So in those cases, it's strongly recommendable to choose some good security tool, okay, and map all these systems there, and simplify the process of monitoring your security aspects. Okay. So anything, Navinder, you would like to add here? It's like the good security tool I can recommend is like SafePass is having almost all the required security control mechanisms required for SAP, and also it has a good integration capabilities with SAP. It's like a turnkey or the ready to integrate options are available, so that can give us a good leverage or the quick implementation timelines.
Nothing else from my side. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we can move on to the next slide. Yeah,
yes,
please.
Well, I think this brings us to the end of the actual discussion.
Okay.
So Nalini, if you just want to tell our audience here today a little bit about Incresol and who you are and what you do, and then we'll hand it over to you, Navinder, to talk a little bit about SafePass.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So Incresol is a almost 11-year-old company, started in the year of 2011. Okay, so with the primary focus, it's like I'm one of the co-founder of this organization. So I'm from the SAP background. Okay, so it's the primary focus of the organization is on SAP, like in all aspects of SAP implementations, or the support, migrations, upgrade, or the cloud journey, or the cloud roadmap setup for the customers. Okay. So along with that, we also have some product portfolios. We build a lot of products on top of SAP, okay, which can ease the business processes or leverage the SAP usability, okay. And considering our geographical presence, we have operations in USA, Australia, and India. Currently, we are operating from these 3 locations, okay. So that's a quick brief about us.
Thanks, Nalini. Navinder?
Yeah, yes, and from a SafePass perspective, we are a global policy-based governance platform. We have teams based out of the US headquarters, but we have teams based out of Argentina, India, UK, Germany, Spain. So global teams look around the clock to serve our clients globally. Very strong engineering background, and we're a small and nimble organizations. It very much is audit, governance, risk, and compliance, and we got great adaptability. So when we know use cases that are happening in the industry, unlike the other players, we are quite nimble, and we can act, and we have enabled in an automated fashion. So that's how we work. Very small, friendly team, punch above our weight, and yeah, hopefully we can speak to any needs you might have.
Excellent. Well, that brings us on to our Q&A session. We have a question here from Chelsea, who asks, are there more attacks on SAP in comparison to other ERP systems? Who wants to take that one?
To be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know the statistics, how they compare SAP versus Workday, Microsoft ERP. So I would say that I would like to think that they've all got their own challenges in terms of structure, in terms of the different layers of security that Nalini explained. So if one of them was, let me put it the other way, if one of them was worse than the others, you'd probably know about it. So I don't think that's I don't think that's necessarily a thing that SAP could.
Okay, next question. What would your top 3 SAP security best practices be? I'm guessing, Nalini, you're the best one to answer that question.
Yeah, okay. So it's like only top in terms of top 3 security best practices. I can say that one, you need to have a proper security configuration or security mechanism in place, like in terms of access controls or in terms of the application security settings or in terms of the network layer security settings aspects, all should be in place. That's the first best practice to be followed. Like SAP has a lot of best practice guides. It's strongly recommendable to follow those best practice guides and implement the required security settings at each level. Another thing is like it's most importantly, like you need to have a regular security assessment mechanism. Okay, it's not like a one-time job as I told earlier. So another best practice is like you need to keep assess your security aspects in terms of user access control mechanism or the roles or the permission based or who is having what level of access or whether they are accessing only the right area, right data only, or any breach happening. Okay, that assessment should happen. Along with that, it is advisable to plan the penetration testings or vulnerability testings in terms of various layers, maybe operating system layer to the application layer or DB layer, all the layers. Okay, that should happen at least sometime. It's like half yearly once or yearly once, or it depends on the any suspicious activities you observe. Okay, in terms of cybersecurity aspects. So that periodic assessment should take place as a best practice. And the third thing is like to control internal data breaches, you need to have a proper strong segregation of duties. Okay, time to time you need to evaluate your SODs and you need to evaluate your role mechanisms or authorizations and redesign them, or it's like realign as per the new process or new changes that are happening at your organization level. That's the key key top 3 items. If you ask me, those 3 I can recommend.
Thanks for that, Nalini. Great insight there. We have a couple of questions left. Deepak asks, okay, so we already have SailPoint in place. What unique value does SafePass bring to the table if we already have a tool like SailPoint already in place?
Okay, so I can give you an example based on one of our current clients who have SailPoint in place. And when they were running their user access certification via SailPoint, the fact that a SailPoint has abstract rules, reconciling that with the ERP, which are very specific, and the hierarchy that's normally for SailPoint is also based on supervisors, people manager, and what was happening was SailPoint as a single source of truth for user access certification was turning out to be a bit of a challenge for a large global organization. So what we did is, when we implemented our solution, we had an API integration with SailPoint, where we were pulling in a lot of the role data along with various attributes and users assigned to that. And then we were also pulling that same data from the SOAP ERP system and running a survey based on role managers, country managers. And then eventually when we when we used to complete the survey, we would have a link back whereby tickets would be created, assigned to the SailPoint team for action. Also, we were able to assigned in SailPoint or tickets created for access assignment in SailPoint and approved in apparently in action versus what actually happens in the ERP system when there are discrepancies between the provisioning and fulfillment. I mean, SailPoint actually is made as an IDM solution. It's not made from the perspective of audit and governance compliance. It's very much focused on ensuring multiple systems, users get provisioned properly from systems, integrates with various systems to assign access. It's carrying out user provisioning. It's carrying out various other IDM responsibilities. It's not necessarily focused on risk and compliance and audit as SafePass is. Our focus is very much to look at your risk and your risk and compliance matrix, the IT general control you're supposed to be satisfying, and performing that in a very transparent way. So in terms of SailPoint, we have integrated with it more than one client, and we can talk about the use cases in more detail if you want to set up a separate call.
Thanks, Navinder. And I guess the last question is for you as well, and then we'll wrap up if Nalini doesn't have any other closing thoughts. Okay, so Tom says we run SAP and we have ServiceNow, which you previously mentioned. So does SafePass integrate with ServiceNow? And if so, what benefits does it provide?
Yeah, so we have different types of integrations with ServiceNow. Actually, one of the benefits, Tom, is that when we've implemented this solution at a client whereby when you run the user access certification in SafePass, at the end of that survey, let's say you had 10,000 records, and out of that, let's say 5%. So let's say 500 records were highlighted as access to be removed because approvers can say inappropriate access needs to be removed. At the end of the survey, for those 500 records, automatically tickets are created in ServiceNow, and we've managed to not just integrate, but we also assign those tickets to the correct team that's supposed to deal with them in the client, in the client IT operation. And the benefit of that is, oh, by the way, this is not complete. Let me just complete the whole. So you create tickets is assigned, they get acted upon. We also managed to get a feedback from ServiceNow, which and a report that shows 500 user assignments were inappropriate, tickets were raised, tickets were acted upon. So from an audit perspective, evidence the fact that survey was carried out, to the fact that access was removed and reconciled, all of that is simply in one platform, which makes it very easy evidence this to the auditor. Otherwise, there are aspects of this particular control which would end up being manual in Excel or via emails, and it's a nightmare. From personal experience, I can tell you it can be a nightmare to manage that. And then whenever there's a manual activity, you also have questions around accuracy and completeness, and you need to evidence that nobody has tampered with it, nobody has changed any values. All of that completely goes away. We're evidencing everything end to end. There's another use case from ServiceNow as well. I'm sure we're running out of time now, but we can also extract the data from ServiceNow in terms of provisioning. So what access was requested in ServiceNow, what access was granted and approved by ServiceNow, and we can get that data back in. We can reconcile that back with the source ERP system. That's the use case around provisioning versus fulfillment. And those are the two kind of major use cases where
I think we lost you, Navinder.
Oh no, those are the two major use cases. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the session then. Nalini, do you have any closing thoughts for our audience today?
No, Emma, it's like I would like to thank all for attending this session and hope they enjoyed and they got some takeaways.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we've shared a lot of insight, so I'm sure that they have. And if anybody does have any questions, then feel free to contact us. You have our contact details here on the screen. If anyone would like a copy of the deck, then feel free to reach out and I can send that over. So a big thank you to both Nalini and the Incresol team and Navinder from SafePass, and to our audience today for joining us. And we hope to see you again next month. Thank you and have a great day.
Yeah. Thank you, Emma. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.